Would you like to pick a message from the tea bag?
Sure, let's go.
To see what you get.
You gotta be intuitive with it.
That's for sure. What resonates with Ian?
No, that's a crystal. Felt like paper at first, but...
Got it.
Oh. This'll be...
Oh, what fell?
Two.
Oh, you got a butterfly.
Oh, a butterfly came out too. How much stuff do you have in there? Butterflies, crystals, tea messages of inspiration.
Yes.
All right. Breath is the voice of your soul. That's a powerful one because my breathing has always been horrible.
That's right.
I've been working on it, but...
Do you want to get a little more into it? I know you've said that you're trying to break a 5 on the mile.
Yes,
am I saying that right?
Yeah, breaking 5 minutes on a mile. So 4:59 or less, please. But yeah, so I have asthma. I had asthma my whole life. I ignored it. Well, had that medication, that stupid machine. They put a mask on me, and it just makes a lot of noise for a really obnoxious period of time. And I started doing cross country in, I believe, 8th grade, and I was just sick every day. I had to come home. I had asthma from running, and I had to go on this stupid machine. And I got to the point, and I'm just like, I'm not doing it anymore. So I stopped going on the machine, and I started going to cross country, and kept running, and came home, had an asthma attack, had some dinner, took a hot shower, went to sleep with the asthma attack, woke up, did it again, repeat. And after doing that for, a period of time, my lungs ended up getting stronger because they didn't have the reliance on the medication. So I'm not going to diss, medication or anything. It has its values, and I'm not going to say that it doesn't, or it's useless, or to stay away from it, or to not take the advice of a doctor or trained medical professional. Not any of that.
Not here. But
I did...
Yeah.
My asthma, I didn't have an asthma attack for 10 years.
That's
because
amazing.
I strengthened my lungs, and then, a lot of other stuff happened, and I fell out of exercising, and my lungs got weaker, and my asthma started coming back. So, but either way, my lungs had always been weaker than the average person. I remember in my anatomy class, we did the breath thing. It, shows how much oxygen you're able to, exhale. And there was a woman there in that class who, she's been a smoker for, years, 20 years, whatever. She was older. And she smokes a pack or 2 packs a day, whatever it was. And her lungs had more strength in exhaling than mine did. And that was when I was at my peak fitness, too, when I was training for the Olympics.
That's crazy.
So, that was when I hadn't had an asthma attack for years now at that point. That was when I was... able to run 10.5 on a 100-meter dash, or and run a 5:45 mile on the hills. This was when I was at my top fitness, and this woman, who was just a regular smoker, had stronger lungs than I did.
I admire that you didn't let it affect your outer world. I feel like you're a very overall fit person. And for the most part, if someone has a condition like asthma, I feel like sometimes they let themselves not explore things because they feel like they wouldn't be able to perform an average person. Does that make sense?
Yeah. There's at the gym that I just started going to, which we might talk about later. One of the guys, I told him, one of the guys who works there, I told him about my goal to break 5 minutes on a mile, and he's just like, well, where are you at now? And I tell him, and he's just like, so wait, and you have asthma, and you're trying to do that? And I'm just like, yes.
Yeah.
And I want to climb Mount Everest. There's a lot of things that I want to do.
Of course.
I don't, even when I fell while rock climbing and dislocated my ankle, and I was in a boot for 6 weeks, I was still hiking with the individuals that I work with, which, special needs individuals. I was still doing hikes somewhere between 2 and 7 miles a day with crutches. So at the end of the 6 weeks of, not having the boot and whatnot, my armpits were completely black and blue, like for so long. Because, crutching, and my crutches broke several times through the hike as well. So I'm still half crutching, and the suction cup wasn't on the bottom, so the freaking crutches sinking into the.
Oh my gosh!
It was a nightmare, and I did 2 miles like that. So it was an experience for sure. I don't plan on having that injury again, but yeah.
That's amazing.
You're only really in so many ways in life. Obviously, there's exceptions.
That's right,
but we're only limited by ourselves.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. It is true. I feel like our minds are stronger than what we think, and sometimes we let ourselves believe that we can't accomplish the things that we can actually do.
Yeah, sometimes because it's hard or because it hurts.
Yeah.
Me running, I guess the perfect example is after I did a very powerful spiritual journey into the mountains.
True.
It was powerful. It was, I was fasting for about 88 hours, and I was hiking 15 miles or so through the mountains over the course of 3.5 days with a third of my body weight on my back. My back was sore as hell by the end of the time.
Yeah.
And I come back and I get back to my car after the 3 days of hiking and doing all this stuff and put it all in the car, and I'm just like, I think I'm gonna go to Hessian Lake and run a mile. And that was the most painful mile of my life. My throat was burning. Everything was just shot. I was also a bit dehydrated too. Towards the end of my journey, I started running out of water as well. So it was a lot. And, making those improvements, moving towards becoming your best self in all these different areas, physically, mentally, emotionally, connecting spiritually, it's not always easy. Becoming your best self is never really an easy thing, and something that, yes, physically has been something that I excel at, but the mental and intellectual side is something that I'm still to this day struggling, and that's more painful to me sometimes. Forcing myself to sit down and read sometimes 20 pages for half an hour or whatever it is, and I need to, because I have a book that I wrote in high school that was purely entertainment, and now going into my spiritual journey, I see how much relation that book had to my life, and I want to rewrite that book and try to get it published and have it tie into a spiritual journey so that people can connect to it and be entertained and amused by it.
Yeah.
But also so that they can, find it can help them find their own path.
Yeah,
they can have their own sparks or their own realizations from the book. So it was somewhat tied to religion in some way, the Bible, and I've never been religious or with any specific religion, but for whatever reason it was tied to that. So I have to read the Bible, and that's just something, just getting myself to sit down there and really read the Bible and then tie it into all these different things. And now, like I said, after going on my own spiritual journey and still going on it, it's the more I realize that is tied to me and my life experiences, and now just adding these life experiences to that book to kind of really help bring people into this path, this journey, to really, move the world in a better direction in so many different ways.
I love that. I think this was the perfect way to introduce yourself, Mr. Ian. So, hi everyone. Welcome to the butterfly analogy. I'm sitting with my good friend Ian that I actually met at a sound healing session. Do you remember?
Was it specific to sound healing? I feel like it was a sound healing, group Reiki, light language. It was a lot of different things, but it was amazing. I recommend it.
Yeah, with our good friend Brittany. I actually recorded with her last time, so you guys will be seeing that episode before this one. But yeah. Yeah, she was amazing.
She's great.
She's great.
I actually did a private Reiki session with her, and it was really powerful. She's she's really an amazing individual. So
She is. And I know you're starting to dive into the world of Reiki as well.
Yeah, I have to do 10 sessions, and then, my mentor is going to certify me once I have feedback from 10 different people. So I actually might do Reiki on her as well.
Yeah, me too.
Do an exchange. So now I'm like bouncing around in all these different places and doing Reiki on different people. So yeah, I want to kind of move in that direction as well and be able to do Reiki, and there's so many different things. I just got certified to be a sound healer with one of my friends, Carissa. So that was a really powerful session, and now I'm going to order my, sound bowls and sound tools and stuff like that. I'm also looking into classes for like vocal sound healing, because something that has stuck out to me, yes, the sound healing bowls are so powerful, and like they take me to a whole different trance level, but just the angelic kind of tone and voice, I feel like everyone's able to have a voice and able to really sing, but some people gravitate towards it naturally, similar to, physical. Some people have to struggle to get there. That's not my case. I struggle in the intellectual world more.
Yeah.
So, or I did, I'm overcoming that hurdle, and I had that, I had my own disabilities when I was in school that I had to overcome, special needs classes, stuff like that.
Do you feel like that's kind of pushed you to go down this career route that you've taken, or?
No, it was just fate, I guess. At the time, I was unemployed for a little bit, and I didn't take unemployment, but, I could have.
Yeah.
It's just something that I feel was urgent for emergencies, and I've always been someone who prepares for situations, so I save. I have an account for this, I have an account for that, and I have an account for this. And I try to, best prepare myself for every situation. Unfortunately, some of my emergency count goes to a speeding ticket occasionally.
Yeah, of course.
So I try not to, or even to stoplight camera ticket. But now I'm really trying to stop wasting money on stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's happened. I've learned from it moving forward, but so I didn't feel the need that I was in that emergency situation where like I need to go on unemployment. But my sister worked for this. She did this had been doing it for a couple years. And, she kind of introduced me to it, and I started coming into it right as COVID started hitting. So that was a trip in itself, but it also helped me to build up more people, because a lot of, I guess, the DSPs, direct support professionals, people who were doing it, they were struggling too because they didn't want to do virtual, or they couldn't do virtual, or some of their people didn't want to do virtual, or because of the pandemic, they didn't want to meet in person with their people.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of openings, and I came in and I filled a bunch of different places, and I was working with 7 people, and that was overwhelming. Now I'm set with 5, and that's good. I have this set schedule. But yeah, that was more just fate that kind of brought me into that. And now I'm moving into this direction where I want to help people heal in the ways that I've been healed, whether it be through sound healing. I'm trying to stick to the things that have resonated with me the most, because then I'll be able to have the most impact on others.
Of course.
So sound healing, Reiki, maybe somewhere down the road, acupuncture, I'll even try to learn.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's just so many different ways to go about it. So
It's true. And I know that your spirituality has kind of opened you to taking little adventures here and there, like your hike that you took up that mountain.
Yes.
Remember? I know that was something very powerful for you, and you shared it with others, and they kind of have questions surrounding the journey too.
Yeah.
Just as I do. So the first question, I guess, is what really brought you to do that hike?
So, an issue or a situation came up within a relationship, and it really highlighted my I guess my struggles with attachment, and how I had some attachment issues, and I did over the course of 3 weeks. I had done so much healing and so much. It was like felt every single day I was at a different healing event or doing this or doing that and trying to expand myself and starting a mentorship and then trying to start another mentorship and doing psychic surgery and shamanic extraction ceremonies, all this different stuff.
Yeah.
And I had these deep healings, but it still highlighted that I have these attachment issues. I have this sometimes almost addiction to going onto the social media and wasting my time, or checking your phone and the text and constantly keeping busy on this thing that can be really a beautiful device. Like it can be $1,000 device, but people can use it to make millions off of it at this point.
That's true.
And I don't respect that too much, or I hadn't respect that. I'm starting to get into that world where I do respect that more. But still, I had these attachments where I was allowing, maybe my relationship or how my relationship was going or how my friendship was going or how this was going or, what's going on social media and getting distracted by all these different things or letting it bring me down in some way that I wasn't getting done or doing the things that I was supposed to be doing. So to do that or to, overcome that, I felt this desire to get away from it all. By myself, alone for the first time. I never had gone camping before. I had only set up a tent actually twice in my life before that, and it was only right before that. So this, that whole journey, it was a calling to, help me heal with my attachment issues and kind of, further step into my own power, further expand myself spiritually, see what I can get. I went into it with no expectations. I'm not thinking that, I'm going to levitate into the sky during a full moon and what have you. I went in with no expectations and, I came out of it feeling very, very healed in some ways and very sore in other ways.
Of course.
But it was very powerful, and I had some of my most powerful meditations there. I felt like I was taken to just completely different levels in so many different ways. And I feel like it was necessary, and I feel like it's definitely something that I will do again down the road for myself, as well as I want to be able to help other people to do something similar, because it is something. A lot of people, no one supported me in doing this.
Yeah.
My family thought I was going to die. And that was before they knew that I was going to be fasting for 88 hours throughout this physical endeavor.
How do you feel like that kind of helped the meditation and everything else a little bit more? Do you feel like it went more in depth because of the fasting, or?
So, my meditations, I've started fasting more frequently, here and there, and slowly have been increasing it. But of course, the longest fast was when I was doing the most physical of 88 hours. But what fasting has so many amazing benefits. And one of them for me is it helps to detach from the physical world. Obviously we have food to survive, we drink water to survive, and that's obviously a thing. So having that distance from it for me helps me to connect more spiritually. So being so physically active and having that, not the reliance on the food and not the temptation of the food, it brings me to like a different state within my meditation where I'm really able to connect deeper within myself. Because the more that you detach and distance from the physical realm, I feel like the more connected I become within my higher self.
Yeah, of course.
So I think that definitely played a role in the power of the meditations. I think that there were a bunch of things that played into that with this with that whole experience. So
I mean, in a sense, detaching yourself from the food also symbolized detaching yourself from like any outward extension of attachment. Does that make sense? Like, you were talking about how sometimes you felt like you were eager to get to your phone, or you were eager to get to these other things. So I think it kind of was symbolic in a way too. I don't know if you kind of saw it in that way, but that's how I perceived it.
Well, it was a bunch of things. So I had my phone on me And before I started, I had deleted all of the apps. You know, I deleted the Instagram.
Yeah.
I deleted the Facebook. I deleted my Spanish app because that thing gets annoying and constantly sends me reminders to, oh, I have to practice Spanish today.
Yeah.
So, you know, I deleted my email. I deleted everything because I knew that there might be an instance where I might have to turn my phone on, glance at a map, and then I would shut my... And I did, you know. There was one time specifically on the first day. Mm-hmm. The first day, of course, it was pouring. Which made my family even more nervous about me going. Just like, oh, you know, you could cancel or you could shorten it and maybe you could come the next day.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe you don't want to do it in the rain. And I'm just like, you know, this kind of makes me want to do it more.
Of course. I mean, when you're told you can't do something, it kind of makes you want to do things. So.
Well, more so just like I've always loved the rain. It's always been pretty symbolic for me. Everyone has a different experience. A lot of people feel, oh, it's a lazy day and it's a movie day. And yes, I do love watching movies on rainy days, of course. But, you know, it's also just a really powerful day. I think rain symbolizes so much. It symbolizes, you know, rebirth, gives life to trees, plants, grass, everything, waters everything.
It's like
in
a
fact,
cleanse.
It used to. There was a time it used to water us. You know, before we had all this running water and everything, we would collect water from the rain. So water has that aspect to it. It has the aspect of just, you know, restarting and just washing away, fresh starts. Like I get so much out of it, and it feels like if I do my runs in the rain, it's like I have an endless amount of energy. It feels like because I'm constantly being replenished or refreshed or cooled down.
That's true.
So there's just so many different benefits to the rain. So when you know, I was a little concerned. Obviously, all my stuff is going to get wet. And like, yeah, so there was that, of course. But I feel like it would only make the journey more powerful, and it did. So. Day that I was doing it, I was just hiking and it was starting to get dark, you know, raining. So clouds obviously makes the sun disappear a little faster or get darker.
True.
So I'm just like, all right, I feel like I should have hit this place by now. It's like the shelter where you set up your tent and whatnot. I'm just like, I really think that I should have hit this place by now. So I turn on my phone and I look at the map and I'm just like, oh, I thought I saw a sign there. All right, so I got to turn around. Then shut my phone off. That was it. I had almost no concept of time for the extension of the whole 3.5 days.
How did that kind of feel? Like, what thoughts did you have at this point in time, or?
I was having the time of my life, honestly.
Yeah.
It was fun. I didn't really, you know, I wasn't thinking about too much of anything on the outside world. It's just like I wasn't thinking really about my job. I wasn't really thinking about, you know, my relationship or my family or really anything like that. I'm just like, I could stay here longer.
That's true.
In some ways. And it's just like, it's so quiet and peaceful and, you know, I'm connecting with nature and I just feel limitless, powerful in so many different ways. I'm going for almost 4 days, no food. And I thought about food for maybe, or I was hungry for maybe 15 minutes of that whole journey, even though I was doing so much physical, you know, exercise. And so, you know, I found the map and I turn around to go back to the shelter and I'm going down the hill now and I fall. The first day, and I thought I was done. And, you know, I'm carrying 1/3 of my body weight. So I was weighing around 165-ish, 167 at the time. I had 55 pounds. I weighed it 55 pounds or so on my back. So I'm weighing over 200 now. And I've, you know, rolled my ankle and fell down a little bit with all the stuff on my back. And I'm just like, oh, crap. Did I just break my ankle? That would really suck. So I sat there for a second and I'm looking at it and I'm just like, all right, it hurts a little bit, but it looks straight.
It looks straight. It looks straight.
And it's a little bit dark, but it looks straight. I think I'm good to go.
Okay.
So, you know, I put my water bottle back in my bag and I continue. And then I get to the shelter and I'm just like, you know what? I'm staying under the shelter. I'm not setting up my tent in the rain. I'm soaked. I'm just staying under the shelter for tonight. But yeah, so yeah, it was powerful in so many different ways. I think, what was it?
Did it help you self-reflect at all on as to why you kind of notice these attachment issues within your relationship or to other external things?
Well, now it's funny that I didn't even think about the attachment to the external things. I was thinking about attachment to other things, but that's a whole nother realization that you just gave me. So thank you.
You're welcome.
But with my, my relationship and whatnot, yes. And it was something that I realized in my 3 weeks of when I was doing a lot of really deep healing and different healing events, activities and whatnot. And, I don't throw blame, and I don't be like, oh, terrible people and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
obviously we're all on this journey. This is, our first experience in this life that it's all a test run for everyone.
Oh yeah.
So, for mistakes that are made or what happened, no one's perfect, and I don't blame anyone for it. So, but with the way that I guess I was raised, it was like a helicopter. It felt like almost like a helicopterish parent.
Yeah.
Where, when I would do things, it would have to be like, oh, who are you going with? What are you doing? Who was there? And this and that. And like a lot of, feel like almost like an interrogation.
Yeah.
With everything that I do. And it even followed me up, even till recently. It was like with my mom specifically. Not that, I blame her for it, of course.
But this is my thing. The reason why I ask is because, as men, I feel like sometimes we don't let ourselves be self-aware. And without being self-aware, you can't really lead to, a transformation. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So with, with having that was the love that I grew up with.
Yeah.
And because that was the love that I didn't necessarily like it. No, I didn't like it, actually. It was kind of annoying. But because that was the love that I grew up with, I also projected that into my relationship, especially when it comes to a man and relationships with their partner. Usually that if there's issues or, something that maybe you're doing wrong or could use improvement or something, it might have something to do with your relationship with your mother that might need to be healed.
Yeah, it's true.
Or something growing up. So, I looked to that. And yes, there was a lot, and then I would project it into relationships. So it did highlight that, as well as, almost a reliance on my mom for so many different things in my life. I mentioned that I was in special needs classes growing up through elementary school and middle school, and even into high school and college. I was allowed to get extra time if I wanted. I never did it because I just hated the idea of not being in the same area as someone else, or, being given a little extra, being treated differently than most people.
Yeah.
So, in 7th and 8th grade, I started getting sick of these special classes, and I'm just like, okay, what do I have to do to get out of this? Because it doesn't feel right to me. Yes, I'm not great at school right now, but and yes, school bores me, I feel like a lot of the stuff you guys are teaching is useless. So, yes, there is, I'm not great. I'm not the smartest person in the world, but at the same time, this doesn't feel right to me. This doesn't feel like it's something that I need. So it's like, okay, well, yeah, you get good grades and then you can get out of this. And I'm just like, okay. So then I got on honor roll, and then I ended up getting out of those classes. And yes, my grades took a hit then a little bit when I went to high school. But the problem is still, elementary school, middle school, my mom was still helping me with homework and projects and stuff. High school, still, my mom would give some assistance with stuff. Even when I went to college in Suffolk, it was like that still reliance. And when it came to planning vacations for myself, my mom has been, a lot. And it's really positive to have that support from a parent, but it can also be to your detriment.
Yeah, that's true.
Because then you almost don't know how to survive in the world as well. And, it comes from a really good place and a loving place with good intentions.
Of course.
It also, everything has its pros and cons in life, and it does comes with its negatives as well. So there's a variety of different places where those attachments, those issues would come from that would then be projected into other areas of my life.
So once you started to have these self-reflections, in those moments, how did you kind of tackle those, and how did you progress from there?
So, there's a bunch of different things, just trying to maneuver this.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm probably going to leave it off so I don't have to
Yeah,
go through
mine
this.
like fell on the floor.
You're just like, yeah, it's better there.
I was like, I'm not gonna pay mine. But it happens.
So there's a few different things. Speaking, communicating with my mom a little bit and like going back into the past a little and just talking about stuff. And in some ways it can be very healing and very helpful. In other ways, it can open up new wounds.
That's true.
Because my situation specifically, it felt like, like I was attacking her. And like, oh, you think I'm a horrible parent? No, you're not. No one is a perfect parent. No one is a perfect kid. I was a huge pain in the butt as a kid.
Yeah.
And no, I will admit that 100%. But I would throw temper tantrums all the time and screaming and whatnot. And then I would get thrown in my room while crying, and then then I had my own issues then growing up and being like, okay, well, when I express myself, then there's punishment, so I need to bottle things up in a lot of ways. So then I just kind of retreated to the basement, and I would play video games a lot and kind of stay isolated away from my family. And there's still, some family walls that I need to break down, that I need to overcome, that I still, have that there.
Yeah.
Probably because of a lot of the stuff that happened, but with the attachment to devices and whatnot being connected, it might be in some ways because I always went to the basement and always, played on the system or whichever system it was and had that connection to that.
It was like your way of coping, like your escape.
Yeah, but it was also very disconnected from the world. So then, being in that space where you're very much in solitude and very introverted, and I always, was more on the introverted side. But then, I didn't get a cell phone until, what was it, like, oh my God, like 9th grade. Now people get them at like the age of 5.
I know,
have an iPhone.
True. Or an iPad.
I'm just like, I didn't get and I didn't want it because it was such a crap phone too. That I'm just like,
what kind of phone was it?
I made it this far without a phone. I don't need it, and I wish I never took. No.
I actually had like a flip phone in high school at one point.
That was still better than the one that I had.
What did you have?
It was like a toy. It literally felt like a toy in my hand. I'm just like,
oh,
I don't
no.
want it. I don't need it. No. So yeah, then getting to that place where you're in a world where you're able to communicate with people, and when you spend so much of your life in solitude in so many different ways, it's like, now I can just communicate to people and get attention that I didn't have, that maybe I wanted but didn't have, and it could just happen. So then it almost formed an addiction.
Mm.
And I've heard some things about Pisces that sometimes they can have addictive personalities. I don't know.
Are you a Pisces?
Yes, I am a Pisces.
Oh.
I hear that they're very beautiful. I still have to look more into that.
Yeah.
Everyone has their pros and cons.
That's true.
I say that anyone is better than the other, but so that's probably formed that attachment there in a lot of ways, is being in that space of so much of my life being in solitude for so many different reasons, whether it was maybe some resentments or something built up against maybe my sisters for one reason, or maybe against my mom for another reason, or I didn't have my dad in my life most of my life, and then there was my stepdad. So there's so many different things that factor into it.
Yeah, of course.
And being having like my dad removed from the house and a divorce on my birthday, and then like there's so many different things that kind of factor into that. And it's just like, oh, now I have access to this kind of attention, and in some ways it almost seemed like I was trying to build a family outside of my family, almost like I was like pushing them away in some ways. So yeah, that's there's a lot of different ways, and this is just stuff that's just coming up right now.
That's okay.
That's gonna be a whole nother meditation for me, and my meditations lately have been sick.
What's the most recent one you've had?
I actually posted about it, and it was about it was 22 minutes long of cold meditation outside at about 5:33 in the morning, and it ended at 5:55. It was 35 to 38 degrees. It was outside. And that was 22 minutes, and then I went to my basement.
Yeah.
My space. And it's a much, more positive environment now,
Yeah,
obviously.
of course.
But I did 2 hours and 40 minutes of meditation down there.
Wow.
And I actually was just hiking with one of my friends upstate, and she brought one of her friends, so now she's one of my friends as well. So I was hiking with my friends upstate and was telling them about, this meditation, and they're just like, or she specifically was like, it sounded like my experience when I was on mushrooms. And I've never done anything.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even see marijuana in person until like a year ago, I think. So like I never smoked it. Haven't had edibles to my knowledge.
To my knowledge, unless somebody like slipped one.
I drank alcohol, once in my life. Like I don't really do too much. So I've never done shrooms. I'm not saying that I won't do shrooms. I'm not saying that there won't be a ayahuasca. It'll be very, very intentional. Everything about me is very intentional. I meditate on it first. And something like that would be a very deep meditation. So with this meditation, though, the fact that it's being almost compared in some ways to a trip on shrooms, it's like we're able to get to these levels and these different levels of consciousness and really expand ourselves in such a way that by ourselves with breath work and with meditation and with all these different healing modalities that we don't really need the external force. Like, it can be great, and I wish it was legal so that there could be more studies on these things. It's just like cannabis is now legal, which is great. And I'm very supportive of its legalization. I wouldn't smoke it, but I think that there's benefits to it.
To it, yeah.
And now that there's more studies, we find that there's some negative effects to smoking it. We legalize it, we study it, and then we learn more about it. So I think that there's better ways to go about it. There's wax, and there's the edibles. And, but I wouldn't smoke it. And like I said, I wouldn't say that it's not on my journey, but if it feels called to it, then I'm going to go in that direction for sure to continue the expansion.
I do like the fact that you mentioned that we can reach those higher states of minds without necessarily taking psychedelics or any drugs per se, but I feel like sometimes we lack that discipline because sometimes it is painful. Like we were talking earlier when you pulled the message, how sometimes, becoming your best self has a lot of pain attached to it. And sometimes I feel like people shy away from it, and that's why they go towards...
Well, it's all so desirable. So... And there's very many differences. I don't know if you're a Star Wars fan.
I'm not.
Yes, you're not. So this doesn't resonate with you.
I mean...
But Yoda is...
yeah.
Yoda is the most powerful freaking Force user in the whole Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
And can take on anyone. 900 years old. Pure, light energy stays in that path of light Jedi. And then there's, those dark side users, fraction of his age, that become powerful so much faster. And Yoda says, when asked a question, is the dark side more powerful? And he's just like, no, it's not more powerful, it's quicker. And it's obviously, psychedelics, mushrooms is probably the healthiest form of drug that there is out there. Obviously, like I said, legalization, more studies, great stuff would come from it.
Yeah.
But, it's one of the healthiest ones from the knowledge we have so far. And I'm not saying the dark side is based in hatred and anger and all these different things. So this is like something from Mother Earth. So it's got its benefits. And I'm not, going against that. And I would advise against the abuse of any such thing.
Of course, yeah.
But, I think it has its benefits for sure. However, yes, we can get to that level without it, but it's a shortcut.
Exactly.
And shortcuts can be tempting. Cheat codes in video games are tempting. They're fun sometimes.
Yeah.
So there's so many different ways to look about it, and you have to take into account, too, my meditation was 3 hours long.
Yeah.
You know, this mushroom, I've like I said, I've never done it, but is it instantaneous? Does it get you there instantaneously?
Honestly, I've never taken
Yeah.
shrooms, but I
Right.
want to say maybe there's like a 30 window, like, I don't know, 30-minute
Alright,
window.
so I was 3 hours. So I was going on for 3 hours with my meditation. So it's quicker.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe it is beneficial in some ways.
Yeah.
Maybe, like I said, there will be a point in my journey when I'll feel called to using it to expand in my journey. Right now, it's not the time. There will be a huge amount of intention and meditation to get me to that point,
Yeah,
to
of
be like,
course.
okay, this is right for me. But there will be a lot that goes into it. And even like when I posted on Instagram and Facebook about this meditation specifically, like even my dad had commented on my Facebook. He just like, sounds like an LSD trip. Just like,
How do you know, Dad?
no, breath work and meditation. Thank you.
I know this season I wanted to kind of center it around the different perspectives everyone has on love. So I want to know, like, on the couple different meditations that you've done so far, like, has anything about love kind of come up, and what did you take away from it? What can we take away from it?
So with my meditations in love, I've listened to a bunch of different speakers on love. I was actually listening to Teal Swan on the way here. I don't know if you've heard of her.
I haven't.
I would follow her. She has some really beautiful advice, and also very much relationship centered in some of her talks as well. But with my meditation, I mean, I've had visions, whether they be visions, whether they be premonitions, whether they be desires, dreams, what's meant to be in another universe, or what is in another universe, what have you. I've had a bunch of different things come up with, you know, who I'm meant to spend the rest of my life with. And, you know, there's so much that comes up with, like, this stuff doesn't come easy. Like, nothing that's really the best is going to come easy. And issues within a relationship that I've had that have showed these different areas within myself that need healing. Sometimes I get to a space and I would still feel like, you know, a little angsty from it, or like something didn't feel right, or I would get upset about this or whatnot. And then in my meditations, sometimes it would show like how surface level that frustration or that angst was, or like how unnecessary it was, or how I was in the wrong in some cases. Just like, you know, this is really a me thing. This isn't a we thing. This isn't a you thing. This is really a me thing. That still there's something that really needs to be, you know, looked over with me.
That's true.
So sometimes, you know, we have an impulse and we jump to things, and we never want to be accountable. We never want to, you know, take the blame. Just like, all right, my relationship is not good because of me. No one wants to say that.
Yeah, I admit to not wanting to take accountability sometimes for myself or my own actions. But in order to maintain a healthy relationship, or to finally be able to develop one with someone else, you have to be able to hold yourself accountable.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, that's even a form of, you know, loving yourself as well.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's another thing that comes up too, is just self-love. I've done so much different healings and so many different things to kind of build this love, because I've really like immersed myself in self-hatred for most of my life. That was similar to what I would rely on, was like that really dark energy, the dark side.
The dark side.
Like anger and hatred and, you know, sadness and all this other stuff. So I would either be motivated by two things. It would either be these negative emotions, or it would be someone else. So I
feel like that is something that I used to be motivated by too. I remember when I used to get into relationships, I would kind of lose touch with myself and pour so much into other people, and they kind of became my reason of being, in a sense. And once I started to realize that, you know, just as easily as I can pour into someone, they can easily take away that from me. Like, they could take that power away. So I had to start learning how to really kind of, I guess, provide for myself the way I did for others. And I think that was the hardest step, because I never really felt like I was worthy of like my own love.
Yeah.
And that's, I think it's still a challenge, and it's still something I'm kind of navigating on how not to lose myself, because now I've kind of developed this very highly independent personality in a sense, where I don't want to get to where I know I can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's difficult, and everything in life has a balance. You know, I was very in a space where I was very codependent, and my partner was in a space where she was extremely independent because she had to do everything herself her whole life.
Yeah.
You know, a very toxic mix.
Yeah.
And you know, it's finding that balance of what's right, what you feel into yourself, and within my meditations, you know, that's where all of my guidance comes. Like, especially when I'm making big decisions, like the 3-hour meditation, that was really meant to you know, bring me to a decision that I was looking to make. And that's, you know, how I make a lot of things moving forward. It's very intentional and very focused. So yeah, I'm not there. I'm still growing. I'm still working on it. But it's like finding that balance. Just like if you're too independent, you know, then you'll start to push people away when they care. And it's okay to, especially like, some people think that marriage is dying, and like the idea of marriage is dying, and I'm like, I don't believe that. You know, it's more about like people don't really want to work on things.
That's true.
Or don't know how to work on things, I guess. And especially,
That's true.
I'm not a therapist, you know, I'm not certified or anything like that, but I don't fully trust the process, I guess, in some ways, because I feel like in so many different aspects of stuff like couples therapy, it revolves around money. Everything in this world really
that's
revolves
like
around money. So it's like,
that's a whole conversation in its own.
They almost, in pharmaceutical industry, same thing, medicine, in a lot of ways. It's about not really the cure. It's not about fixing or solving the problem.
Well,
it's about like putting a Band-Aid on it, making you feel better.
I was just going to say that.
And then you'll take the Band-Aid off at some point, and you'll have to come back
to the drawing board.
Keep that flow of income.
But this is the thing. It's like, we live in such a consumerism-driven society that I feel like everyone has kind of been looking outside of themselves to find this cure that is never going to appear, because at the end of the day, it's like, in order to have a fulfilling relationship, you have to be willing to sit down and have these intense conversations and be able to listen without getting defensive, and listen to understand. And because I feel like we're so quick to label behaviors as toxic or narcissistic or what have you, you know, we miss the idea that, of course, I'm not saying to stay in an unhealthy relationship, right?
Of course,
but
there's a level.
There's a boundary, you know, and you have to, I guess, learn that. But when someone is willing to work with you, and if someone is willing to put in the work, I feel like that should be taken into consideration.
Oh yeah, we had this talk very briefly, right before we jumped on. But you know, the Jordan Peterson, who, again, you know, he's an amazing speaker. I won't agree with everything he says, but in this specific instance, he talks about relationships. And really setting up the situation of, you have to know what you want in your relationship. You want to know, you know, if you're not happy, if you're not feeling like it's serving you, well then, okay, well, sit down with yourself. Don't sit down with that person yet. you sit down with yourself and just be like, okay, what's wrong? What am I not feeling? Is it a me thing? Like,
Yeah.
I have found sometimes, not always, but sometimes within my own relationship, that is it a me thing? Is there something within me that needs to be healed and solved and move forward? And sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. So, okay, so you sit with yourself, you find out what you want, what's the ideal, what's your needs, what's your want, and write them down even.
Yeah.
You know, do what feels right. Your needs, your wants, your boundaries, your expectations, your ideal relationship setup, everything. And then come to a space where you open this space with your partner, and they do the same thing, and be like, okay, well, what's your ideal relationship? Or what are your needs? What are your boundaries? What are your wants and your expectations within the relationship, to make it that real ideal that, you know, nothing's ever going to be perfect, but as close as it can be, as right as it can be. I said recently in one of my posts, like, I'll never make the 100% pure right decision.
Yeah.
But I want to be as close to right as I can be, which is why everything is so intentional with my meditations now.
Exactly.
So, you know, you come to this space and you're like, okay, well, what do you want? You tell them, and just like, okay, well, what do you want? And then you tell them, and you bring these two, you know, beautiful visions together, and instead of, you know, getting everything you want, you might even get more than what you want, because you're getting to that space where you're working together, you're a team, and you're bringing the two visions together to make it one beautiful vision that's even more than what you wanted or what you would have hoped for. So
yeah,
there's really so much that goes into it, and you have to be able to want to work on it, you know. I feel like this was a really brief thing that I saw. I don't think I was able to find it again, but I think it was supposed to be a comedy skit, but there was so much truth to it. I just saw it briefly on social media, but it was like people are in love with the idea of love, and they romanticize everything.
That's true.
But like, how many people, I guess, really know what love means, or like what is that? Because when stuff gets a little hard, that doesn't mean that you back away, or you get a divorce, or you
throw in the towel.
Yeah, or, you know, then develop toxic behaviors, or just like blame game, or yell or curse or scream, or
That's true.
you know, there's other things that people do in these situations that I won't go into, but like all these different things, like, is that love? Like, is that going to solve the problem? Or like, who does this serve? Like, you make if you at a point with marriage or what have you, and you make that commitment, it's like, you understand like the power, the impact, like everything that came behind that. This one speaker, Eric Thomas, he's a motivational speaker who, you know, he's just a really amazing speaker, talks about struggles with his wife that he had, and just like how she just left him. Like, he wasn't listening to her, he was doing his own thing and wasn't listening to her, and she just like disappeared and drove all the way from Alabama up to Michigan by herself, and she was done. And he talks about, you know, I got on the road and I drove up there. He's just like, no, you're not leaving me through a call, or they didn't have text back then. You're not leaving me through a call or a letter, you know, you're going to look me in the face, because I made a commitment, you know. I gave too much, you know. I stood in front of your family and I said, you know, till death, and I stood in front of the preacher and God and everything around and said, till death do us part. And so many people don't know what that means. Like, do you understand the power of being like, I do? And like, what do you do to further that? Yeah, I know stuff comes in the way in life, and it might throw you off and knock you for a loop. That's going to happen anyway in your life.
Yeah, it's true. If so it's not the relationship, it's something else.
Yeah, so why not have that partner where you can, you know, set up this space and you can work through stuff, and then, you know, it makes it all the more powerful and even strengthens you in a lot of cases.
That is true.
And then, you know, when it does happen just to you, then you have someone that's there to help you through it and support you. Like, it's so, we're becoming so, we just give up on so many things so easily. And I don't know, you know, 100% the cause of it or the reasoning behind it, but there's just so much stuff that goes into it. And I feel like, we could go on forever with it.
It's true. No, but you're right. It's so much easier to just go down these rabbit holes of like toxic behavior and the yelling and all these things, I feel like this relationship that I'm currently in has been really testing me on whether or not I can actually practice what I preach, which is actually developing a healthy relationship with someone. For the most part, I feel like me and him have reached a heavy point in the relationship where you start to notice the differences and how they affect the relationship and how they affect each other. But one thing I admire about him is the fact that he's an awesome communicator. And even though sometimes, we struggle, we always get back to a space where we could genuinely listen and genuinely speak about how we're feeling and then make a change. So I think, it's a big test, but I am willing.
And, that's the thing too. Like, you get into a relationship, you have to acknowledge the fact that we are always growing in life in so many different ways. And I've possibly done more growth in the last few months than I've done in the rest of my life. Like, it's been so much. But, we're constantly growing in life. And you have to really make sure that you keep those spaces open to realize that, and bringing that into your relationship, because otherwise it's just going to grow apart. And, as your relationship, there is a level of independence that, that you do sacrifice.
Yep.
And I guess some people, open relationships, not my thing. But everyone's into, something different for everyone. And I'm not going to judge on that. You do what's right for you, I do what's right for me. But, you're constantly going to be growing. And if you love someone and you want it to be a successful partnership, then you have to realize that and constantly, not constantly, it doesn't have to be like, that time of the month or, a bi-monthly thing or what have you. But, maybe once you start to feel that, bring it in and open that space, like we're still growing, and make sure that we're growing together and rather than growing apart. Because we sometimes will grow without even realizing it in a lot of ways. And if we allow that growth to be so separate from our relationship, then that's going to be a problem, because then there's going to be a space of catch-up where once you realize it, you're going to be like, oh crap, I've grown so much, you've grown so much, now there's this huge gap. Is it too late to bridge this gap and kind of, intertwine? Like, it's good to be conscious of that. That's true. To really allow for the best path forward for you and everyone. Because if you love someone, then that comes with it. For sure.
Well, Ian, I think this is a great place to stop. Thank you so much for coming out here and recording with me and sitting down and having this amazing conversation. Do you have any socials you want to share with us?
Like
Instagram or...
Sure. It's Ian Atkinson on Facebook. Yeah, it's Ian Atkinson on Facebook. But then there's Ian's Journey 111. It's got a picture of me meditating, silhouette of me meditating with the sunset on a beach.
Which I think is amazing.
Yeah. Yes. Ian's Journey 111. 4 ones. 111. So that's the name that felt called to for this time. I am on a journey, and I'm going, very deep into it. And, that name might not be there forever, but we'll see.
So I'll make sure to link it down in the description box. But until we meet again, thank you again.
Yeah, of course, anytime.
Bye.
Bye-bye.